Hello, my name is Daniel Garcia with the Breeze Home 5.0 agent team. The product owner is Dr. Masood Sajadi. In this video, we'll be going over the maintenance for the Breeze-Vagrant repo. And so we'll start by going over the kind of two main things that you'd be responsible for as far as maintenance for the Breeze-Vagrant repo. The first being the wiki page for Vagrant. And so you'd have to maintain this. And here you can see there's not only links to videos and information on the Vagrant, but also just Linux in general, as well as Docker Compose. And so this should be kind of the first place that a new developer can come to set up the development environment, and figure out how to start services, and effectively develop on the project. And so the second thing would be obviously the Breeze-Vagrant repo itself. And so here we can see, just go to the top level here. And we can see a lot of different things. We'll go over all the different parts of the repo here, but first we should go over some of the things we're trying to achieve with this. So we want it to be easy. So we should limit the amount of interaction required to start up the development environment. We want to do it in such a way that it's maintainable and reliable, and we want it to, as closely as possible, mimic the production environment. And that's definitely a place where there can be improvement. So let's take a tour of the files here. We can just start with the Readme. So you want to keep this up to date with the wiki and the code. And so there's different sections regarding the different parts. Probably one of the most important being this troubleshooting section. So you want to keep that up to date as you solve issues. And there's also this activity diagram at the bottom, which kind of shows how the kind of everything flows through the process. And so to generate that, you can go to the docs folder, and you'll see here we have the image itself, as well as this PUML file, which is a plant UML source file that defines the activity diagram. And so try to keep that in line with what's going on as much as possible. And so after the Readme, probably the first thing to look at is the Vagrant file. And so we have a few different things going on here. One is we declare kind of all the information that we need to have Vagrant set up a virtual machine. But along with that, we're also doing a few things with environment variables. So we'll just start here where we declare what plugins. So for example, this Vagrant VB Guest plugin that's used to keep the VirtualBox guest editions in sync with the host. And so Vagrant doesn't provide a way to do this, so we just have this code kind of hacked together of this list of plugins, and then we'll check that all those plugins are installed and print a warning if not. Next we'll see some of these helper functions. Parse rsync ignore is provisioning, and get username, and we'll see those used later on. So here we'll declare that we want an Ubuntu 18.04 VM. We want this port forwarding. We want this much RAM. We want to name it such and such. Here we'll check for a Breeze rsync environment variable being set, and if that's set, we'll parse the rsync ignore, which is just a list of files, kind of like gitignore, and we'll pass that as excludes to rsync. If not, we'll just use VirtualBox as a normal shared folder infrastructure there. We also define this provisioner, this bootstrap provisioner. So this is just going to make sure that Python is installed, as well as a library for talking to Postgres. And then finally, the main provisioner, which runs the Ansible Playbook, that's actually sets up the dev environment. So you can see a few things here. First, the get username gets passed to the playbook, and we'll see that used in the playbook, as well as we're going to use pip to install Ansible, and we're going to do Ansible local. And so if you just put Ansible here, you'll actually be using Ansible on the host to provision, whereas by using Ansible local, we'll copy that playbook and all the needed files over to the guest VM and then run Ansible in there. which is easier for supporting Windows and making sure we're cross-platform. And so I'll just show you that rsync ignore. It's very similar to what you see in git ignore. The next file of interest would be Ansible CFG, which is just the Ansible configuration file that'll be used. And so this just sets some parameters for us. There's also this logs directory that just contains an empty ansible.log. This is the log file that Ansible will use. It's not really meant to be committed. That's why it's empty here. But if you're troubleshooting or debugging, it can be useful to ask somebody for the ansible.log file so you can see what may have gone wrong. As well as see this files directory where we're going to see files that are going to be files or directories that get copied to the VM. And it's different than the templates file, which are files that will be templated into the VM. So you can see the kind of .j2, it's a Jinja 2 syntax for templating. And then we have a roles directory. These will contain our Ansible roles. So if I just go to the base role, you can see a similar file structure to what we have at the top level. So if I go to the tasks, you can see these two different task file. Main is the default entry point for a task. And so here we can see some of the Ansible syntax. You can see it's YAML. And we have the start off with a name. And this is important. It usually serves not just as a name, but kind of like a comment or some documentation. This become true and become user are to become the root user. And then you'll see a module name as well as parameters to be passed to that module. And so you'll want to look at the Ansible module index. For example, here I have the documentation open for the pip module. And you see it'll walk you through all of the different parameters that module can take, as well as some examples. And so you could use this to accomplish whatever task you need just by looking through this module index and finding the appropriate module for what you're trying to achieve. Another thing to be aware of is variables. So anytime you're seeing this Jinja 2-like syntax in Ansible, we have these variables here, and so you should just know about the variable precedence. You can just look that up in the Ansible documentation. So you know that what variables are overriding what variables. And so if we go back to the top level of the repo here, you'll see the vars.yaml. And so this is the main place where you'd want to go to set any variables used throughout the project if you want to change anything. So as far as maintenance, there's a few things you could do. Some of these ports, for example, can't really be changed here because the ports are hard-coded into the entry point of the Docker images. So one improvement could be to make that more flexible and then allow us the ports for certain services to be changed from here. But for example, if you wanted to add another repo to be cloned, you could just add the name of that repo here, and it will know to look for it. And this is also where you can change the name of the SSH key file. So by default, it looks for ID_RSA. If you wanted to look for something else, you can do that here. And Git forces whether or not to force cloning a repo that already exists. And so finally we go to the heart of the playbook, or naturally the playbook.yaml. And so the playbook was written and should be maintained such that it can be run independently from Vagrant. So we'll just declare to run this on all hosts. If we're not being passed the cogs user here, we're going to want to prompt for it. And then we'll start running our tasks. You see the first thing is to include our variables from vars.yaml. And then we'll start through. And you can look through the activity diagram to see what is going on here and how that works. And so as far as keeping Breaze-Vagrant in line with the production environment, you're going to want to make sure to mirror any changes in the way that Breeze deploy is set up in the Vagrant. So ideally it would be great to be able to use Breeze deploy in the Vagrant. That will probably require some significant modification to Breeze deploy, so that would be a good user story for the future. And so there's a lot that can be done there, but as things change here, they should at the very least be mimicked in Breeze-Vagrant, or ideally Breeze-Vagrant should be changed to use Breeze Deploy instead of templating custom Docker compose files. And so that's it. I've been Daniel Garcia with the Breeze Home 5.0 agent team. Product owner is Dr. Masood Sajadi.